Blackwater Draw Museum. My name is Samantha and I am the collections manager here at the Blackwater Draw Museum. So once you come in the doors, the first thing I like to show everyone is this introductory panel on the Blackwater Draw National Historic Landmark. So this site is just a few miles outside of Portales, and it's the reason we have the museum, the reason it was founded. So the Blackwater Draw Locality 1 is the Clovis type site. So that means it was the first site to discover the Clovis people. So when I say Clovis people, I mean the people that were making the Clovis points. So we have a few examples here if we want to get a closer shot. We have tons of these in our collection, especially ones that are coming out of the site. And these were the first ones to be found with mammoth bones, which is pretty exciting because at the time, we did not know that people lived at the same time as mammoths. So in the 1930s, the site was discovered, and we had people archaeologists coming out to the site. So here we have a picture of E.B. Howard, who came out in the 1930s and excavated. This is a picture of him with one of the mammoth tusks at the site. And some of these were actually eroding on the surface, which is very interesting. So the site, what we call the Paleo-Indian period, had different types of megafauna, which most of us refer to the Ice Age period. So right here we have an example of a saber-toothed tiger. So a lot of us are familiar with this guy from movies like the Ice Age. And so this is just slightly bigger than what it would have been in real life, but I think pretty terrifying to come upon in person. Their teeth are very large, I think around 9 inches, about the average. And we'll have a couple other examples of different megafauna that we'll see throughout the tour. So let's head on this way. We have several different exhibits about archaeology, some of the tools that are pretty common for archaeologists to use in the field. And this is an area that our students do study here at Eastern New Mexico University. So we have an undergraduate and a graduate program. So students actually get to do field schools and use this kind of stuff. So one of the exhibits that we finished doing in 2021 is this one over here, which is an exhibit about lithic technology. And so this is kind of giving examples of some of the points at the site, as well as different materials from the region, like obsidian, alabates, flint, which is super common over in Texas, not too far from here. One of the interesting things that people like to look at when they come into the exhibit hall is this huge case of lithic stone chip tools. So one of the games that we like to play with people that come in is to guess how many artifacts are in this case. It's a fun little game to play. There are quite a few. I think the joke we like to say is there's more than 200 but less than 1 million. So do try your hand when you're in. Heading on over this way, I mentioned that we had the saber-toothed tiger. One of the other animals was actually camels. So a couple of years ago, they did start to excavate at the Blackwater Draw site, and there was camel remains coming out of the surface there. And so this is actually a baby or a juvenile camel, so this would not have been full grown. But one of the interesting things is that after the Ice Age time, these animals did die off and go extinct. So that's something that we'll talk a little bit about when we get over here. But we do find their remains out at the site, kind of like mammoths and mastodons. So one of the fun things that we have on exhibit is touchables. So we have a couple different molars and teeth over here that we encourage people, and especially kids, to come in and touch. During COVID times, of course, we're using hand sanitizer and all that. But we have the two different types here, mammoths versus mastodons. And their different teeth are meant for different things. So these are meant for more of an environment that's crushing tree branches and stuff like that. And then these with the mammoths that are meant for more grinding. We also have some large bones on display that people are welcome to touch that are real artifacts. All over from New Mexico, some coming from the Blackwater Draw site. So one of the other interesting components is some of our skulls that are on display. This is a comparative exhibit, kind of comparing the saber-toothed tiger, and other animals like the dire wolf that no longer exist anymore to more modern species. So if we get a close-up of this case over here, we can see things like the white-tailed deer, and even some coyote and some dog skulls. I think this is an English bulldog. So you can kind of see how massive these skulls were. So if we head on over this way, I mentioned earlier about the different kind of animals that are coming out of the site. And one of them that's super common to find is bison. So the bison that no longer exists anymore is the bison antiquus. And this animal actually did not go extinct, but was a relative of the current bison that's about 25% smaller than the bison antiquus that lived in prehistoric times. So we have some skulls on the wall over here, and these provide an example of how the horns and the shape changed over time. So the one up here in the middle is actually a modern bison, and this is more of the extinct type. So you can see the different horns and how they've changed over time. So we'll go back to the middle here. This diorama is giving examples of what you're going to see out at the archaeological site. So this is real dirt, real bones that are coming out of Blackwater Draw, and this is showing you the stratigraphy. So archaeologists use the word stratigraphy to talk about the different layers of dirt. So the more you go down is the later in time that you're going down into. So we have kind of more of a modern bison jaw up here at the top. As we go down, we're getting to a bison antiquus skull, mammoth bones, and this is all stuff that you can see out at the site. We do have the interpretive center, which is a large structure over ongoing excavation features. So the different levels that are going to show you these different animals, and you can literally step back in time. One of the interesting things about the bison skull here is that it's actually crushed. And that's because over time, when the layers of dirt build up, it gets very heavy. And so that's actually going to crush the materials underneath it. So this exhibit is Beaded and Beautiful, which is part of the Miles Anthropological Collection. So we had a photographer come in a few years back and photograph a bunch of the Miles artifacts. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in the display cases over here, but the Miles Anthropological Collection came to ENMU in the 1960s from a man named Fred Miles from Roswell, New Mexico. We have, I do believe, 2,800 objects in the collection, and a lot of them are beaded artifacts, so historic and contemporary native beaded textiles. So these are just a couple examples here. We'll see more in a little bit. But this is just an example of some of the beautiful artistry and photography that can be done with some of our collections. So if you're more into the art side of things, here's a great exhibit for you. So if we go around the corner here, we're going to hit the kids exhibit. So this is the kids corner. We have a dig box where kids can come and do mini excavations, all different artifacts. Some of these are actual real ones that are from our educational collection. They can kind of dig around in here using the artifacts or the tools that an actual archaeologist would use. This is pretty similar to what we teach some of our students to do, although using a little bit more of our methods and stuff during our field school. One of the things that is kind of the tool of the trade for an archaeologist is a trowel. So this is something that every archaeologist would have in their bag. So we have a bunch of toys over here for the kids, as well as they can come and grind some corn. So we have a mano and metate and a mortar and pestle. This is probably something that people still have in their kitchens today. Looks pretty familiar, but it's pretty simple. You just take one of the stones and you grind it against the other one, and you're going to eventually make flour. And so corn was a big part of Native American people's diets. Some areas, as much as 50% of their protein was actually coming from corn. And corn was a a food source that could be stored over the winters. So it was used in all aspects of the diet. So this is a fun thing for kids to do and try their hand at it. So if we move on over here, we have our two display cases, which we fondly like to call our historic trash display cases. So essentially what archaeologists do is we're digging up trash from the past. But this is actually stuff that's coming from the Blackwater draw site that's more modern and more contemporary than we often might think. So the Blackwater draw site actually had gravel mining happening. So some of this is coming from the company that was doing the gravel mining, as well as just things that ended up there over time. People going out there and shooting cans and whatnot. The thing in the middle here is actually a busted up bowling ball, which is kind of a fun fact from our collection. Not something that you might think that you would find here. The second display case is stuff that has more to do with the mining company. This stuff is still being found throughout the site, but this is more like trash and stuff that the mining company was using and just kind of threw out at the site. One of the other things we offer on display is a book section. So these are books related to what we have on display and kind of what we cover here in the area. So you're welcome to flip through these. Some of them we do actually sell in our gift shop. Feel free to look through them while you're here. So we're going to head over to the Miles exhibit cases next. So these kind of loop around. When you come in, you can go one of two ways. We went to the right. So as I mentioned, the Miles Anthropological Collection came in the 1960s. And it was actually split between two different departments at the university. There were quite a few mineral components that are at the Miles Mineral Museum, which is also on campus if that's something you're interested in. We got all the archaeological and ethnographic materials. So ethnographic is referring to more of the contemporary or historic period items, more like the textiles that I mentioned. So we have lots of pottery in the collection. This display case has some ancestral pueblo vessels at the bottom, which is coming from more of the Mesa Verde region in Colorado, the Four Corners region. We have some Casas Grandes pottery, which there's a bunch more on the other side I'll show you as well. And this is coming from northwest New Mexico, mostly Chihuahua, Mexico, so just across the border. This stuff is very interesting. I have a personal interest in it as I did my research during my master's. And so some of the interesting things is the effigies in this collection. We have all different kinds of animals. There's some bats here, some rams, as well as some human effigy vessels. Some super interesting stuff, and just beautifully painted polychromes as well. So we're going to continue on with the Miles, but real quick here, we're going to take a pit stop in Folsom, New Mexico. So Folsom, New Mexico is famous for the Folsom Point. So kind of like the Clovis Point, the Folsom Point was discovered first, and it actually set back our understanding of human occupation in North America first, before the Clovis. So at the time, these were found actually by someone named George McJunkin. So we have a picture of George down here and a book on him. And one of my favorite artifacts from the collection is his saddle. So George McJunkin found the Folsom site. Unfortunately, he did not live long enough once archaeologists started excavating the site, from what we know today. But he was actually a former slave, a black cowboy, and his story is very interesting. So I think it's super great that we have this object in our collection. And like I mentioned, the Folsom site is important because it was discovered that the Folsom Point was discovered with the bison antiquus, which I mentioned earlier. So here in the corner we have our mammoth mascot. Sometimes we get students to wear this during events. Not the last couple of years because of COVID and a lot of our events have been canceled, but occasionally we will get students to wear this, even when it is kind of hot out. So continuing on this direction is more the Miles collection cases. So we have a bunch of the pottery over here, some more historic wares from the 18s and 1900s, and then more of the Casas Grandes stuff that I was mentioned intermixed over here. We have some basketry, some really gorgeous baskets with really intricate designs. And then we also have some beadwork. So there's all different stuff in here. We actually have a class at ENMU that's doing research projects on these right now, especially a lot of the beadwork. I'm really excited to see what they come up with, and we're going to integrate this into our exhibit cases. But this is just a fraction of what we actually have from the collection. A lot of it's in storage, and we have been highlighting a lot of this stuff as well as other things from our collections on social media. So if you want some more information, a little bit more in-depth information on some of these items, feel free to check out our social media. Our collection also includes some Kachina dolls, which another one of our students is doing some research on as we speak. So we're just going to round the corner here and continue on with these cases. More marine shells, basketry, fibers of all different kinds. These are from yucca mats, fibers. Yucca was a very important material that could be used for multiple different things. More historic pottery. And more Casas Grandes pottery. So I often get asked if I have a favorite object on display. I am a little biased because I did study the Casas Grandes pottery, but my favorite pot is actually down here. And if we get a close-up on this one, we can actually see some of the designs. So these little figures are actually abstract macaws, as in macaw parrots. The macaw parrot was super important to the Casas Grandes people, just like a lot of people throughout the Southwest, because they were imported like other goods. Marine shell, turquoise, they were highly prized, especially for their feathers. So we are just going to round the corner over here. Like I said, when you enter, you can kind of go one of two different directions. So we're just going to enter tour on this side. So to the objects that just went on display yesterday, these are fresh out the gate, little sneak peek for everyone, are these huge 13-foot long spears. So this is a bit of an odd thing to have in our collection, but something that we're super excited about. These spears were actually used in one of the episodes of the original Star Trek series. So it was an episode called the Galileo 7, excuse me. And these were acquired in 1967 by one of our former directors. So when he saw the episode aired, he contacted Hollywood and asked them if we could acquire them, because they're actually modeled after the Folsom points, which I talked about earlier. So we have the correspondence on display. We're going to get some more exhibit text here. But this is actually a letter from the associate producer of Star Trek to the current director, Dr. George Agogino, at the time, saying, yes, you can have the spears, but you're going to have to figure out how to get them to your museum. So that's super interesting. We're going to have some more exhibit components coming soon, like having the episode playing for everyone to see. So that pretty much ends our tour. One thing I did want to mention is that we do have a gift shop. So when you enter, you can see everything that we have for sale. This is the same stuff that we have for sale out at the archaeological site. Different shirts, stuffed animals, and books that I mentioned. So we are happy to have everyone back now that we are open again. And we hope that you all come out to the site and the museum soon. Thank you.